filming this about my prep for The Habit of Victory, an OSG game, Kevin Zucker type game. It's Series 2X, which means it's kind of, I think that's double the kind of scale of his standard from his series. You get exclusive rules, series rules, tables and charts. These all came with the game except for got weather tables, administrative point pools, negotiation tables for sieges. You've got Austrian realignment table because they're undecided at the start and whether they're going to join the war at this point or not. You've got fort masking table, so are you able to sort of initiate sieges or you have to mask the fort first? I think that's how it goes. Reinforcement table. It's the grand campaign is well, it finishes on 28th of June and it starts on the 6th of December as 3 days per turn. So that's 66 turns plus about 3 more. So I think it's 69 turns for the whole game. The game comes with cards. So it's a bit unusual. I don't know about it was unusual for the Kevin Zucker games. So you've got some card explanations there. You've got a homemade, sort of downloaded summary of bridging and pontoon rules because it's quite important, particularly in this game. And you've got this other side of the turn record track there. Here's the turn record track. I'm just playing a 12-turn scenario. Finishes here. These are the reinforcements that will be coming. Quite a few French, some Russians. The units, they're not really as many as it appears here because every unit, well, many units have two parts. One is their leader. For example, that's just a anonymous major general. There's a leader bestiaries. So he has one bit that goes on the map upside down. So these are all the French forces, and we have no idea if the size of these forces. They could just be cavalry vedettes. These are the coalitions. They could just be cavalry vedettes, which are essentially kind of screening or reconnaissance units, or they could be a mass kind of like whole corps, or anything in between. So the leaders go on the board, and they are only flipped during a combat, and one other bit I can't remember. But so there's a picture of La Salle. He's a cavalry leader. And his so he has a strip here on his organisation display, and that is his organic unit, La Salle Cavalry, 1 strength. It could go up to 3 strength because you get replacements that are also not these are units, but just replacement points on the turn track. So that's how the game plays. Everything has a strength marked here, and then it's got a kind of like marker on the board, hidden information. So there's the coalition organisational display. Here's the map. I can't get much of that for you, but essentially there's quite a lot going on. It's Prussia, Eastern Prussia and Poland, so Masuria. So this is the Masurian Lakes, which people might know from the First World War. Here actually is Tannenberg. So it's that area that we're fighting at. And down here, I'm pretty sure this is the Vistula. It might be the Bug, I don't know. I don't know the difference, and it's not marked on the map, annoyingly, although they are mentioned within the sort of commentary and the rules. But so this is a very important supply route. You might be able to see there's a dotted line, red dotted line next to it. That's a tow path, where obviously barges and so forth could be towed down the river. So that's kind of like the key to the campaign. And these games are all about manoeuvre and staying in your centre of operations and supply. So I just played the French half of the first turn, so the French player turn, and you see he starts there with a supply source. Now going up the map there's various different points that could be French supply sources, so that can change but you would do it carefully because you know, in the interim you're out of supply while your supply source is moving itself. Then you also have a centre of operations. So this has to track along the road back to that, maximum of 21 movement points, or that's 42 road hexes at the best roads, major roads. So it could be, potentially, it could be sort of all the way up there and still in contact with this, depending on the roads. And then from that, all units to gain movement commands have to be within 14 movement points, cavalry movement points, dispatch distance from the centre of operations. So a movement command is essentially a play of one of these cards. Now these were developed with the help or in combination of Mark Herman, who's actually on the Board Game Geek. He's posted some replays of there's three campaign scenarios, and then there's the grand campaign scenario. So I'll be interested in his replay of this one after. But anyway, so it's along similar lines, but essentially you play the card, and this is the movement rate for infantry and cavalry, and that you can declare as if this turn you can fight a pitched battle. You can either have pitched or pursuit battles. Then there could be an event. You do not have to take the event, and it's not either or. This is what you're playing the card for, and you might take the event as well. And then down the bottom you have different keys for attrition. So different cards would give you different attrition rates. So you have to take all these things into account. Like if you've got big forces, you want to play a card that are sort of out of dispatch distance of the centre of ops, or the centre of ops is not connected to the supply centre, or the supply centre is being moved. Your forces are likely to suffer bad attrition, so you want to think about which card you want to play, which has different rates, depending on what's here. Or you might want the event, and you also need to consider this rate. This rate is the unit that you're about, or the force I should say, because a force could be a number of several units. You know, like a leader could have a few units attached to him in his force. So you want to think about that, and you also might want to think about the event. These are very interesting. I've played 1809, which is the same kind of system, different scale, but basically the same system, and it doesn't have all these events, so these are delicious. I should also mention on the back of the exclusive rules there's a pursuit events table, so after a critical battle or retreat by an army commander, you also get further random events happening, which is going to make this really an interesting game. A lot of chaos of war will come out in these, and a lot of surprises as well, because before, in 1809, I was kind of like moving the forces around, and you kind of, there was a bluff and risk because you didn't know exactly what the enemy forces were. You know, you reveal them in combat, but you can also do a repulse. So as movement, during the movement phase, you can attempt to repulse a force, and then you reveal them. Or I can't remember exactly because I didn't play that a long time. Haven't played for a while, and not this game before. And the rules have changed a bit, and are sort of tweaked specifically for this habit of victory. But basically, you might not get a full idea, but you get sort of to within, 5 SPs or something of what the force is. And then when you get to the actual then when you have a full-on battle, then you'll know. And the vedettes can attempt to repulse. They won't be successful because they're so weak, but they will find out what's there. So there was that, but now there's also the cards. So, for example, the French have been very fortunate. They've played 2 cards called New Wagons, which effectively they have enduring effects. So they last until a monthly interface, and that effect adds distance to their between the supply centre and the centre of ops. So they're actually going to be able to extend themselves more than the coalition would be suspecting at all, which could pounce some nasty surprises. Now, if you're out of that dispatch distance from your centre of ops, you can attempt to move by initiative. That was one of the numbers on the leaders, and that's on a die roll. There's a lot more to the game than I'm going to sort of quickly skim through now, but yeah, there's something else I wanted to say about. Oh yeah, so this particular game stroke scenario, I've put some extra markers on the map, my own markers, and you might think, what are they for? Well, there's two there that represent these little squarish ones. They represent these. This is Warsaw, and that's Polsk. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. If those are held by the French, then they can get Polish reinforcements. Without them being held by the French, they can't. So you can see they have Warsaw, they don't have Polsk at the moment. This other marker here has the same effect as the blue one. That indicates victory conditions. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those on the map, and three are in the can I get this? 3 are in the Allied hands, and 2 in the other orange are in the French hands, and they give they will determine victory, because essentially victory occurs according to Paris morale. It starts this scenario at least on 0. If it's in the plus, then the French are going to gain some sort of victory. If it's in the minus, then the coalition are going to gain some sort of victory. You got there's a weather track there. I hadn't found that before. Good. No. So you can have all sorts of weather. Like at the moment, it is frost. In frost, you cannot build depots. No, you can't build redoubts, and there's like battle effects and stuff like that. So yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot going on in the game. But anyway, what I was saying about the morale, yeah. So if I capture this, then it goes up 1 for the French morale. If the coalition captured this, it goes down 1. So the coalition could take those two, take us down, but really the onus is for the French to go to here, because the other marker, that yellow one, is twinned here. Every monthly interphase I mentioned before about that enduring effect. Every monthly interphase, if these are held by a side, or is it just the coalition, the French will lose victory points. So the French have to get these and start accruing victory points, because if they do nothing, then they're going to lose. So they're going to have to go there. They might even have to get up there. You can gain victory points for other things. I wrote a little list, because there's a few tables like that scattered in the rulebook that I wanted. So I put it here on the combat results table and the pursuit table. The Paris morale. So you capture these places, you get a plus. You capture a major personality, that's, someone like Napoleon or a Stars general, particularly effective one like Lannes, Ney, Davout. You win a critical battle, so that's kind of like a battle with quite big losses. It's not definite, so you have to roll for it, but you could win or lose on that. Coalition and cantonment, okay, we won't talk about that now. If the old guard is staked and they lose around a combat, French loses morale. I mean, basically the minuses are against the French, pluses are for the no, it does depend, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay, the coalition controls Königsberg at end, okay. That's always going to be the case in this scenario, I think, because Königsberg is right at the top of the map, so I have to check. That might only be for the grand campaign, but maybe not. If Napoleon's eliminated, either the coalition declares, like, I think, a relative or marginal victory, or you just continue playing with -2 victory points. And then this is it. After it's 14 plus Russian SPs within 5 hexes of Polsk or Allenstein, so either of those 2 yellow areas, France loses 1 victory point at every monthly interphase. Now, and we start with a monthly interphase, so I think that's going to count for this turn, and then I end here, so I have another monthly interphase, so I could lose 2 victory points pretty quick. I have to take that in 1806, and the game ends in 1807, so by 1807 it's either of those 2, but in 1806 just this one, so I need to try and take that. But here's the problem, you see, these are damaged bridge markers. So essentially the French sort of come on here, that's their base. Although we're making a base of operations here in Warsaw. We need to get across this big river. It's a primary river, so it cannot be crossed. And even all the way up to here, it cannot be crossed. It becomes secondary here, where units can cross it without building bridges or having bridges that have not been burnt. which is the case here. And you cannot just build a bridge if there's a unit on the other side, even if it's just a paltry vedette. They will stop you from building a bridge. You can't just build a bridge wherever you like, but you do have pontoons. So he's got some pontoons and he's got some pontoons. Well, they've each got one set of pontoons. The Allies also have 3 as well. So I can start chucking a pontoon over here, but again, it's gonna, it's not. It only takes a turn, I think. But if the enemy comes on the other side, maybe not just a vedette. I'll have to check that. That's where we need all those clarifications or pontoon and bridge sheet. This is neutral territory as far as I can tell. This is Galicia. So I think that is the case, is that if Austria decides to join in, then that opens up and you can get Austrian units on the coalition side. But otherwise they're out of it. So the French are kind of hemmed in. I mean, we can get across up here, but our supply source is here, so we need the bridges to start getting out here, because you cannot get too far away from your supply line. Your centre of ops can go so far. You need to control the your supply line, so you can't just blitzkrieg willy-nilly. You've got to take the bridges, control areas, and keep the enemy screened out. So the French need to slowly move up, and obviously the coalition are trying to keep them away. And in this scenario, we've seen the sort of victory conditions. I've just got to get there, and in the next few turns, when the year changes, I'll have to get up to there as well, as the French coalition will be stopping them. And I think the French need to win some critical battles as well to ensure victory. So the coalition might be sort of ducking and diving. So that's just a quick look at the game, which I'm playing as a prep, just so that I can teach someone, which is a scary thing when you've never really played it before. Same thing, I've got Napoleon's Triumph. I have to be teaching that. And I really hope I get to play them. There's no definite at the moment, because although I've got no one signed up, I've sort of entered these as a to play, but no one's signed up to them yet. So maybe I won't get to play them, but we'll have to see. So there you have it. Terrain table, which I prettified up. I just sort of colour keyed it, because otherwise it was just a bare list. In fact, these are all types of urban terrain, so all types of bridges or river effects. But anyway, enough of that. Let's have a look at some of the cards. So you'd have player turns, but in the enemy player turn, you can force march. So essentially, the French get to move. Then before combat starts, the coalition got to move. They can force march, which is not as bad as it seems, but it's it's like that extra effort to get towards the battle, etc. And so they played a card for that, which was a probe card that had a nice high march rating. This number is a number you might have to roll to, I think, effect that. Let's see the effect of probe. If recipient, not if played as opint. Opint is, well, I won't bore you with that detail. If recipient ends its movement in an enemy zone of control, immediately reveal all adjacent enemy forces and their approximate strengths. So you don't even have to try and repulse them, and it's all adjacent ones. So that's great, extra probing. Here's an example of the French. Now, what was this card? It's not an enduring effect. I think you might have just played that. So I should have put that on the discard pile. If recipient has at least one so you've got that. You can play a pitched battle. It's turn, and the event is one artillery SP and attacks the defender in a town. Blah blah blah. Mortars set the town on fire. Okay, so extra excitement. Yeah, I think that's. I don't remember. I have to check that. But there's the new wagons that they played. It gives transport bonus as an enduring effect, and we didn't suffer. The two forces that moved by these cards didn't suffer any attrition. Or didn't have to check for it even. This is for sieges, so I didn't need those. I played those just not for the events, but for the movement. Let's have a quick peek at another card, and then I'll stop. Hasty attack. In addition to the standard repulse effect, cavalry may also inflict casualties. Interesting. Okay, so yeah, that's lovely. That's great. That's great. And Mark Herman helped with all this, and so he's obviously played at playtest as well as Kevin Zucker. So we've got tons of extra effects. There's 50 cards for each side, and there's random effects after certain types of battles. I think this is going to be a great game, but the main problem I see at the moment is the fact that you don't know who your forces are. So there's a fair bit of who was that? Who was that? I don't remember who's where. I'm thinking of photocopying, shrinking or getting off the geek facsimile of the map, A4 size, several of them, so that and I'll put them in transparency so that we can draw on them with greaseproof pencils or whatever, as just to remind ourselves what's going on, and also perhaps to plan attacks. Obviously shades of GD40 and Lyros there. Okay, that's enough for now. So this is Habit of Victory. Wish me luck. Hope that I get a play in. If not, at least I'll have had a bit of fun now. And yeah, interesting. This is all going around Masurian Lakes area. I got a few games on that First World War games of there's the Tannenberg from the Strategy and Tactics is a bit of a favourite of mine, but an older game on a newer battle compared to this one.